Hey everyone, my name's Madison. Thanks for checking out my channel. Today I'm going to talk about the nonfiction books that I would like to read in 2022. So I'm going to start with two that I am currently reading and I'll go on from there. So this book showed up on my TBR last year as well, but I have finally started it. I am currently reading John Adams by David McCullough. This is a great book to start the year with because I really like John Adams, and I knew that before reading it, but I really respect him more and more now, and even though he's cranky, he generally has a very positive outlook, or at the very least one that I can identify with, and so I'm really enjoying reading this. I'm about 160 pages in, and so far a couple of the things that I have really enjoyed in it is I loved reading about John Adams' perspective on Thomas Jefferson so far, from their first meeting, and they've only known each other for a couple of years at this point. But I've also really enjoyed hearing John Adams' perspective on what good government is and why the idea, like what the idea of happiness meant to him. And which is interesting because we have this idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which always has just seemed odd to me, but hearing his perspective on it, I think I kind of understand where he's coming from now and why that was included. So far, really great book, excellent writing. I love everything that has been included, which I know is something that some people complain about in biographies. Either there's too much information or not enough, and so far it feels pretty perfect. The other book that I'm currently reading is House of Gucci by Sarah Gay Forden. This is what it sounds like. It's a story about the Gucci family and the Gucci company, and it obviously was just made into a movie starring Lady Gaga and Adam Driver, and I haven't seen the movie yet, but I really want to because it looks fantastic, and so I wanted to read or listen to the book first. I watched a Book Olives review or book to movie comparison, and I decided that I was going to start with the book because I do think it would be really interesting to read about the ins and outs of the Gucci company, whereas I think the movie focuses more in on Maurizia and Patricia's marriage and their relationship. So I'm really enjoying the book so far. I'm listening to it on audiobook. I'm about halfway done right now. So I should be able to finish both of those books by the end of January and be, on my way to meeting my nonfiction goals for the year, which probably should have started with that. I like to try to read 12 nonfiction books in a year, one a month. Sometimes I don't quite read one a month, but then like last year I successfully read 14, so that made me very happy. However, there is one more book from my list from last year that I didn't end up reading, and I'll go ahead and start with that as well. I do want to read the Brontes this year. I was gifted it last year for Christmas, and it's just massive, and I didn't get to it because I read that Blinken biography that was also massive. So hopefully, I'm hoping that I thought I would read it in the summer last year, but that didn't end up happening because all I want to read in the summer is like cake books. This doesn't feel like cake. So my plan is to read all the other books on my TBR and finish this in the winter, in the end of 2022. Besides, winter should work out fine. It looks like a wintry book, and the Brontes seem like wintry people. So hopefully that works out. Let's see, what else do we have here? Let's do two more biographies. The next biography that I would like to read this year is Hamilton, or Alexander Hamilton, by Ron Chernoff. Chernoff? Is that how you say his name? I should probably know that. This is the book that the musical is based off of. So I really like the music in the musical. I have listened to the soundtrack, but I haven't watched it yet. Even though we have Disney Plus, I don't know what I'm waiting for. Anyway, I would like to read this year. Hamilton is an interesting character, and I'm curious to learn more about him. I learned a little bit about him in the George Washington biography that I read last year, but I'm hoping I can get a more well-rounded idea of who he was as a person from this book. And then the last biography is one I may have had on my list last year, I can't remember, but it's Edmund Burke, The First Conservative by Jesse Norman. one of the reasons I want to read this is because Edmund Burke is in England, and he spends a lot of time talking about the American Revolution. He tried to defend the colonists prior to the Revolutionary War. He also had quite a bit to say on the French Revolution. Don't think he had super positive things to say about it, but I'm going to find out. My husband read a big fat collection of his writing. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to cheat and read a biography, and hopefully that gives me a somewhat well-rounded idea of who Edmund Burke was as a person. The next book on my list that I would like to read this year is What Matters in Jane Austen by John Mullen. The subtitle is 20 Crucial Puzzles Solved. I saw this book for the first time on Kelly's channel, Books I'm Not Reading. It was one of her top reads for 2021, and so I was searching for more books, nonfiction books I would like to read this year, and I decided to pick this one up. It seems really, really interesting, and then when I got it home, I looked at who the author was, and I actually realized that I have seen this author do kind of a debate that was between, who's the best author, the Brontes or Jane Austen. And I don't know why Jane Austen has to go up against three sisters, but I'm pretty sure that was the gist of the debate. But I just really appreciated everything he has to say, and I believe this book is, it just answers 20 specific questions that people have as they read Jane Austen, and he uses those questions to talk about the important themes and other things that make Jane Austen a great author. So I'm very excited to read this year. I think it will be a good pairing. I'm reading Persuasion with two of my sisters-in-law next month, so I think I would like to read this in February as well. No promises, though. The next book is one that I shared in my Christmas TBR. My sister-in-law got this for me. I suppose my sister and brother-in-law. Mike, I'm sure, helped out too. But anyway, the title of this book is Shadow of the Titanic, The Extraordinary Stories of Those Who Survived. Katya said that this book is more about the lives of the survivors after the Titanic. It's not necessarily about their experiences that night. So, I'm very interested in this. I did read the first few pages of it while we were up in New York for Christmas break. I think it seems like it's going to read really well, so I'm very excited about that. And then, speaking of terrible things happening, the next book that's been on my TBR for a little while is The Great Quake: How the Biggest Earthquake in North America Changed Our Understanding of the Planet by Henry Fountain. This book is about a big earthquake in the 60s in Alaska. I am very interested in this because we lived in Alaska for a few years, and there was a big giant earthquake when we were there, and it wrecked a whole lot of stuff, and it was one of the scariest moments of my life. And so I really want to read a book about another earthquake that was worse that happened in Alaska, especially because, I had a lot of friends in Alaska who lived through that 60s earthquake and stayed. And I think Alaskans are amazing people because of things like that. So I'm very interested in the science behind the earthquakes, and so I hope to learn a little bit more about that and its effect on Alaska as well. And then the last book kind of in this disaster category is Endurance, Shackleton's Incredible Voyage by Allred Lansing. I believe it is a story of Shackleton, who was an explorer, and he was going to try to find the South Pole, and that's obviously a dangerous journey. So I think it sounds awesome. Now the last two I don't actually have on my physical bookshelf, so I will either listen to them on audiobook or over the next couple of months pick those two up, hopefully at a used bookstore. The next book on my list for the year is The Benedict Option by Rod Dreher. I read a book of his last year that was about politics. This one is more about how Christians might choose to live in the world. My husband read it a few years ago. He really thought it was an interesting idea. And I believe the general idea is that he's encouraging Christians or people of faith to kind of form closer knit communities where they support one another rather than living so entwined in the secular community. I'm not sure I'm getting the gist exactly, but I will find out what Rod Dreher has to say and then talk to you about it. I certainly appreciated Live Not by Lies, especially reading it in the beginning of last year, and I am curious to see what he has to say. The next book on my list was also in my Christmas TBR, and it is What to Say When by Sean Carney and Steve Carlin. This is published by 40 Days for Life, and this is a book, I think, about pro-life arguments, or more specifically, I think that it takes pro-choice arguments and dismantles them, or attempts to dismantle them, and so I'm very interested in reading this just to broaden my perspective and understanding about the pro-life arguments. And then finally, the last book on my TBR is called American Marxism. I saw this on the shelf of a YouTuber that I like named Anthony Bryan Logan, and while I don't agree with everything Anthony Bryan Logan says, I thought that this book just caught my attention. And so it is written by a Fox News commentator, so we do have to take that with a grain of salt, but I think it sounds really interesting, and essentially it's about what it sounds like, about Marxist ideology in American politics today, and I am very curious to find out what he has to say. Normally these books kind of upset me, you know, so I'll try to stay calm, but we'll see what this is about, or we'll see how all that turns out. Okay, I think I covered it all. There are certainly more nonfiction books that may come and go throughout the year. I know my church wants to read a couple for our book club, so we'll see. So we'll see what happens. But those are the 12 books. 12? Yes. Those are the 12 books that I'm most interested in reading this year. So I'm wondering, have you read any of them? What do you think? And what nonfiction books are on your radar for this year? I hope you all have a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye!